Hi folks, thanks so much for tuning in. In this video, I cover the measurements that I'm making in my room for my Martycube subwoofers that I built. In the previous video, I covered the build of my Martycube subwoofers. If you have not watched that, I would recommend you watch that first before coming here. I will post a link to this either in this video or in the description down below. In this video, I'm going to cover all of the analysis that has gone in making the measurements and basically the deciding factors in choosing the right configuration for my particular room. So really appreciate if you could like this video and subscribe to my channel. If you have any comments, feel free to post them down below, and any questions, feel free to ask them as well. I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching.
So I'm going to take a couple of measurements now to see what is the best configuration for my room. The table that you're seeing here just documents the different possible combinations, right? So let me explain and walk you through this. So I'm thinking about 4 measurements that I will need to take. When I refer something here called an fmod, what it really means is that mostly people are using something called a mini DSP to connect between the amplifier and the receiver. And they're using that for a number of reasons, including manual kind of equalization, as well as to set the high pass filter. Right now in my setup, I'm not using a mini DSP. I had earlier evaluated if it was needed, and I had determined that maybe it's not probably needed for my setup. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a direct connection between my receiver to the amplifier. So when I directly connect from my receiver to amplifier, there's always a possibility that your high pass filter is not there, and that it could cause some issues with your subwoofer, right? So basically what it means is that at the tuning frequency or below, like around 20 hertz, usually what you would do with mini DSP is implement a high pass filter so that it basically brings down the curve after the 20 hertz, below the 20 hertz region where my Martycube is tuned, so that you could basically protect your drivers from overexertion and exceeding the X max and kind of getting destroyed. Now, in my case, since I'm not using a mini DSP, another alternative that I found online was something called fmod, right? The fmod is a line level filter, and I'll just search for it online and I'll show it to you right now. Fmod, parts express, 20 hertz. So if you look at this here, it comes like this. What it does is it's a 20 hertz. You get it at different frequencies, but the one I purchased was 20 hertz. What it does is it kind of attaches itself between the receiver and the amplifier, and instead of mini DSP putting that high pass filter, what this would do is this would put the high pass filter at 20 hertz and bring down the curve so that your device is protected, right? So this is what I purchased. So what I want to do is I want to implement it without having the fmod on as well as having the fmod off. And I also want to have something called a room curve, right? A room curve is where you're basically bumping up some of the frequencies to tailor the results of Odyssey to your specific room. So to just give you an example of what it looks like I'll walk you through my Odyssey results, right? So this Odyssey results that you're about to see right now are from my Odyssey mobile application. Odyssey mobile application is about $20 that you download, and you can have a lot of tweaks that you can do on that. It's a very useful application, so I purchased that. And if you're seeing here, the results of Odyssey are here, right? So basically this is what Odyssey has set it up with. Pay particular attention to the subwoofer, right? Minus 6.5 and minus 7.5 is what it's set up as. The default results from Odyssey is like a curve, flat curve like this on the front. It's showing me a front speaker like this and subwoofer like this. And what I've done, I'll come back to this later. Now what happens with a room curve is I have an ability to tweak those settings so that what I'm doing is, if you look at this here, I'm actually bumping up the frequency at the lower frequency ranges so that the lower frequencies are going to sound as good as the ones in the higher frequency. And that's what's happening here. This is the advantage of putting room curve. Now when I do the room curve, what I want to do is I want to measure with the fmod on and with the room curve on, with the fmod on but without the room curve. And this is a direct connection without the fmod and no room curve, and a direct connection without the fmod and with the room curve. I want to do all these possibilities. In order to put a room curve, what I do is you actually on the mobile app, if you have the mobile app, it's fairly easy to do it there. But I typically, if you have to interpolate multiple points to put in a target curve, it's a bit difficult to do it in the mobile app. So there's another application that someone in AVS forum had created called Odyssey. So that's what I've downloaded here. This is Odyssey. So what I'm doing here is that you can upload the Odyssey file that basically came back from your configuration, right, from your Odyssey run. And what I've done is I've already done this here, so I just want to show you the results, right? So I took the default curve that came back, and I tweaked it. So if you're looking at it here, it loads up all your front left, center, front right, all of these channels. So the way I'm putting it in a room curve is I'm going to the front left channel and I'm adding boost to these frequencies. I'm boosting the 20 Hertz by 6 dB, 55 Hertz by 6 dB, 160 by 0 and 400 by 0 so that it creates like a slope. So I'm doing that for the front left and front right channel, and I'm also doing it for the subwoofer. The subwoofer actually, since I have two subwoofers, the Odyssey, the way it works is it only takes one and merges the results, right? So I've gone here to Odyssey and I've added a frequency of 20 Hertz and I'm boosting 6 dB, 55 Hertz, I'm boosting 6 dB. And when I save this result and send it back to my receiver, what you see is on the Odyssey after room curve would look like this. I'll come back to this in a second. The boost you're seeing here, the 6 dB boost that I added. And just to compare it, the center channel, I have not increased anything. Now, a couple of other changes that I'm also making is that since I boosted by 6 dB, one of the key things that you need to do is you also need to boost the subwoofer trim by the same 6 dB. And as you're seeing here, it's not needed for the main channel that I boosted. But with the subwoofer, the way it works is that, and there's a detailed documentation on this. If you want, you can look at it and see why it is happening. But when you boost the subwoofer curve by 6 dB or whatever it is, you also have to equivalently increase the subwoofer trim. So it's almost like a duplicate that you will have to do here, which is not there for the other channels. So you would see here that my before was about minus 6.5 and minus 7.5 for the two subwoofers. But because I put a 6 dB boost in the curve, I need to bring it up to minus 0.5 and minus 1.5. So in addition to this, the other changes that are common between the before and after, and these are tweaks that I did, was I changed the speakers, all the speakers, I changed them to small. I've set the crossover to 80 Hertz. And I'm also limiting the mid-range compensation is something that Odyssey by default is on, so I turn it off. I don't want any mid-range compensation. What mid-range compensation does is it's basically around the 2000 Hertz region. It puts a kind of a drop in the curve. I just want to see if it's there here. No, I don't see it here. Hold on. Yeah, it puts a drop in the curve. Let me see if I have it here. No, it's not showing it here because I've kind of limited my frequency here. So it shows you here where when I move this slider back, by default Odyssey's range is that it's between 20 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz. It shows the equalization process being done in that range. So for my purposes, what I did and what is recommended usually online that I've seen is people are limiting this multi-EQ filter frequency range to about 500 Hertz or whatever works for them. And the reason for that is because you're telling Odyssey that you don't equalize beyond this particular range for me because I have very good speakers with me. I don't need you to do anything beyond that range. So in my after curves you would see, and before curves you would see that I've basically brought this down. But this is the blip that I was talking about, right? The mid-range compensation, it comes in with a dip here. The default results from Odyssey. What it means is that that particular frequency Odyssey introduces a dip, intentional dip. So I don't want any of that to happen. I don't want all those tweakings by Odyssey to happen. So what I'm doing is I'm turning it off. So what you would see here is that the curve editor results that you're seeing here would basically limited the frequency to 500 Hertz. And I've also taken off the mid-range compensation. So in the after room curve, if you're looking at it here, you would see all of these checked off. So I'm not using any of these. So based on this, I want to now take my measurements. So what I'm first doing is that I'm opening up the software called REW, right? So REW basically is the software that I'm using for measuring the output. In this, what I'm doing is I'm going to preferences first, and then I'm using my UMIC 1 for taking the readings. And I just want to first calibrate it. So the way I'm calibrating it is I want to keep it up to about the recommended range is between 30 to 50 on the input. So that's what I'm doing here. You would see that I'm trying to keep it at 40. So that's calibrated. Now what I want to do is I want to take the measurement, right? So the first one that we're doing here is the fmod is on. It is connected between my amplifier and my receiver. And I want to have the room curve. So the room curve is already in the receiver. I've sent it to the receiver. So this is the measurement I want to take. So let's go here and take the measurement. There's an old one. I'm just going to delete this and just going to go to measure. And I'm going to say what is being stated here is fmod on and room curve on. So I'm going to say fmod on, curve on, start. Okay, good. So one reading is done. So the next one I want to do here is the fmod on, but with no curve, meaning no bumps or no 6 dB increase or nothing there. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be transmitting that curve to the receiver and coming back and doing the second measurement. So I've transmitted the curve to the receiver now. So let's do the fmod on and room curve off. Fmod on, curve off, start. Okay, right there, you're seeing the almost similar curve, but down 6 dB, right? That was basically the bump that we created. In the previous one, we had a bump of 6 dB, so that's why it was up, and now it's down. So that's good. So we can go to our third test right now, which is this, where I want to plug out the fmod from the receiver and the amplifier. In between that, I want to take it out and have a direct connection with no fmod, and the same as before, no room curve, and I want to see where the curve stacks up now. So let's go and label our measurement. It's going to be fmod off and curve off. So measure fmod off and curve off. Start. Okay, it is a red line here. So basically, a couple of things that come to attention immediately is the fact that the curve is off, but still the output is almost similar to the curve on with the fmod, right? The blue and the red. If you're looking at the blue and the red, the blue was the one which actually had when I say blue, the one that is highlighted on the screen right now is the one that actually was the curve where your fmod was on and the curve was on. Comparing that to fmod is off and the curve is off, it's almost similar except for the under the 20 Hz region. But you're seeing that the boost that we applied with the fmod is almost similar to no boost applied without the fmod. So the other change is that under the 20 Hz, if you're looking at it, with the fmod, it's basically bringing the curve down so that your damage to your driver is kind of prevented, right? The HPF high pass filter is incorporated there. But on the red, you don't see that, right? Even after 20 Hz, it continues flat. So that's the major difference there. So now let's go ahead and do our fourth test, which is going to be off, but with the room curve, right? So I need to send the room curve. If my guess is right, this output should probably be higher than the previous one. So this should be the highest possible output. So we'll test it out and see. So now I've transmitted the curve back to the receiver. So the outcome that we want to aim for is for the fmod is off, and there's a room curve. So now let's go and take the measurement. So in order to measure, I'm going to go say here as fmod is off and curve is on. So let's start. Oh, look at that. So let me change this to black so that it's easily visible. Okay, so look at this output, right? So significantly higher than everything else, where the fmod is taken off and the curve is on. So very high output here. So compare this to the fmod being on and the curve is on, right? Which is this blue here, right? So there's quite a bit of difference between these two, right? So if you compare these two, there's quite a bit of difference. Now with the fmod off and the curve is on, curve is off, that result over there is comparable to fmod on and curve is on, right? So if you're looking at this, these two results are comparable except for under the 20 Hertz region, where there's about a 10 dB difference at around 10 Hertz, right? But if I really compare it to the fmod is off and the curve is on, that's a significant bump in the whole thing, right? Compare this and so compare these two, right? fmod on and curve on, and fmod off and curve on. Quite a significant bump here, about 15 dB difference in output. So the key decision in front of me is, what do I want to really do, right? Do I want to put in the fmod and sacrifice some output in the interest of protection for my gear, or am I okay with doing the fmod off and having the curve on, or the fmod off and the curve off? Personally, I don't think I should do the fmod off and curve off because I'm getting a little bit of better output with the fmod off and the curve on, so which is this one, right? So this is the decision that I need to make, which one to go with. Now, out of all of these, right, so if I look at the last one here, right, the fmod on and curve off, right, that is the lowest possible, right? There's no reason for me to keep the fmod off and the fmod on and the curve to be off, right? So what I can do is I could probably ignore this measurement, and the decision will be between these three as to which one I really want to go with. So the main thing is under the 20 Hertz, there's some protection here, but here it's kind of flat, and here it's boosted up. So I need to see between these three, if I take the fmod off, what is really going to be the impact on my equipment. So now comparing the two results here where the fmod is off, one of them is with the fmod off and the curve off, and one of them is the fmod off and the curve on. So how do I find out if there's going to be any impact to the driver? So let's take, for example, the fmod off and the curve off, right? And I'm going to go into my WinISD, and I already have the driver loaded here. So I'm going to take the same driver here, right? So I'm going to be using a signal of 50 watts. The reason for 50 watts is because if I'm looking at my SPL graph here, I am able to reach a peak output of about 110 watts, 110 dB at about 50 watts, right? And 110 dB, if I have two subs in the room and the peak and the reference for sub is 115 dB, and if I'm assuming two subs are there and there's going to be 6 dB gain, so I can back off from there, and I'm targeting around 109 dB on one sub, right? So it's around 110, it's close. So I'm able to get to 110 dB with the 50 watts input power. So with this, what I'm looking at is I want to see the, I'm not applied any curve, right? So if you're looking at this here, there is no curve applied. So if you're looking at my EQ filter, I've not applied any high pass filter or EQ. So I want to see what is the impact on cone excursion here. Cone excursion is still under X max. So this seems to be perfectly fine in the sense that I could go for this curve, not use an fmod, not use a curve, get the same output, and be good under 10 Hertz. Under the 20 Hertz. So let's take this off and compare it, right? So it's almost similar as I showed you, right? The fmod is on and the curve is on in the blue line, and the fmod is off and the curve is off on the red line here. But there is quite a significant gain to be had over here, right? So this is really good. So which tells me theoretically that I could use that, take out the fmod, and still be under cone excursion at this level. So now let's try the other one. Fmod is off and the curve is on, right? How do I implement the curve, right? So the curve, if you remember in Odyssey, we had basically put in the curve at a couple of points, right? So let me open up the Odyssey application. I'll open up my file. And if you remember the subwoofer, we added a 20 hertz 6 dB, 55 hertz 6 dB boost. So if I come back to my WinISD modeling and go back here and 20 hertz 6 dB I'm adding, and 55 hertz 6 dB I'm adding. So when you look at that, what's happening is cone excursion is exceeding, right? So it's exceeding at about 14 hertz, it's exceeding it. So there is a risk that the driver could be damaged under at around 14 hertz. Right, so this is fine. So my decision right now then becomes, do I want to have this or this? Because if I use the fmod and the curve, I'm compromising about 10 dB output over here. So that's a lot in terms of the compromise, right? So I'm finding that without using the fmod, I'm still going to be okay if I don't boost the curve and have the same level of output here. So this intermediate thing might be a choice that I want to take. I don't want to go to the higher end or I don't want to go to the lower end. Might be this with the fmod off. So it's something that I need to play around with and see what makes sense to me.
Folks, thanks so much for watching. So hopefully this video was useful. It shows you all the analysis steps that I've gone through in actually coming to a decision on which would be the right setting for my room. As you saw, I have about 2 or 3 shortlisted options that I could go with. So I'm still making a decision on which is the right way to go. I would really appreciate if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and post your comments down below. So hopefully this was useful. If you're going through a similar exercise yourself, stay tuned and good luck. Thank you for watching.